Hello everyone, you're listening to Audiobookish, an audiobook review podcast. My name's Fahed Rahman. I'm here with Poppy Knight.
Hello.
And today we're going to be covering The Carpet People by Terry Pratchett. Before we get onto that, Poppy's got some exciting news.
I do, yes. So if you've listened to previous podcast episodes, you'll know that myself, as well as Fahed, I'm wanting to get into the publishing industry, and I'm really, really pleased to announce that I have a job in the publishing industry. I'm working as an audiobook publishing assistant, so that's right, it's not just publishing, it's also audiobooks, for Belinda, who publish great audiobooks, and they're also the team behind BorrowBox, where you can listen to audiobooks and also borrow ebooks through libraries. So yeah, I'm super excited. At the time of recording, I've been there for 2 weeks and it's going really, really well, and I really like it. And I want to encourage anyone who is searching to get into the publishing industry to genuinely sign up for agencies. Is what has got me this job. I used Inspired Selection and they were amazing, so I fully recommend them. Certainly, UK based people looking to get into publishing, they were fantastic, but I'm sure other agencies are equally great. And yet it really, really helps with the tough, just endless applications and things like that is just made so much easier through that. So that will be my one bit of advice. And yeah, really excited about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I was really pleased when I heard that
Aww.
Poppy had got a job in publishing. It's been, I think, kind of a tough year for everyone. So it was just good news to see someone that's worked really hard towards getting a job in publishing, actually achieving it. We're both part of the Publishing Hopefuls Facebook group. That's kind of where we met. And, there's so many talented people of all ages looking to get a job in publishing, and it's really difficult. But for Poppy, it's really well deserved as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's get back to reviewing the book. So the book that we're reviewing today is The Carpet People by Terry Pratchett. This is the 50th anniversary release. I'll just read out the blurb from Amazon. In the beginning, there was nothing but endless flatness. Then came the carpet. The old story everyone knows and loves, but now the carpet is home to many different tribes and peoples, and there is a new story in the making. The story of Fray, sweeping a trail of destruction across the carpet. The story of power-hungry mouls, and of two Munrung brothers who set out on an amazing adventure. It's a story that will come to a terrible end if someone doesn't do something about it. If everyone doesn't do something about it. Co-written by Terry Pratchett, aged 17, and master storyteller Terry Pratchett, aged 43. And Poppy, do you want to read out the bio for Terry?
Yeah, so Sir Terry Pratchett was the acclaimed creator of the global best-selling Discworld series, the first of which, The Colour of Magic, was published in 1983. In all, he was the author of 50 best-selling books. His novels have been widely adapted for stage and screen, and he was the winner of multiple prizes, including the Carnegie Medal, as well as being awarded a knighthood for services to literature. Worldwide sales of his books now stand at 70 million, and they have been translated into 37 languages. Sir Terry Pratchett died on 12th of March 2015.
Yeah, that last line still makes me feel so sad. Pratchett's death hit me quite hard. He was one of my favourite authors, if not my favourite author. So it's still really hard. Just the fact that he's gone. This 50th edition audiobook was narrated by Doctor Who himself, David Tennant, and from what I understand, David Tennant was Terry Pratchett's favourite Doctor Who. So I think there's a lot going on in there, kind of like emotionally speaking. So let's just go through the basic plot of the book really quickly, because it is a straightforward enough story. So we've got Glurk and Snibberl, who are a part of a tribe called the Munrungs, who are a part of a larger empire belonging to a people called the Dumai. And what essentially happens is that their village is destroyed, and then they have to go on this adventure where they need to save their people from the Fray and find safety. And they encounter a bunch of characters like Brocando and Bane, who are part of the Dumai and the Deathmini tribes, and they come into encounter a bunch of other people and creatures within the carpet. So I mean, it's not like the most complex plot, and we don't need to kind of review the plot in detail. But it's a fairly standard, straightforward adventure tale, and it is kind of in the much of the review literature that I've read, it is kind of aimed at quite young people as well. I think they do mention kind of 7 years old and upwards, so it's not one of Pratchett's more complicated works either.
Yeah, that's probably fair. And yeah, again, going with, like you say, the reviews and stuff, a lot of them pointing out that this was Terry's first book, kind of that bit that you mentioned in the blurb about co-written by his younger self and his older self. And a lot of people saying that you can sort of tell that. I'll be honest, I have some big issues with this book.
Yeah.
And there are some definite, Pratchett-y elements in there, but it's not kind of his finest glowing work kind of thing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That said, this is a book that I think read at least 3 times, and this is the second audiobook version I've listened to. So there is, even though I know it's not his most polished work, there's something about it that does draw me into for rereadings, and I don't know why that is, because it's kind of borrow that Mark Commodism. It's not without faults. There are lots of things in the book where you can kind of see the joins between Terry Pratchett the senior and Terry Pratchett the junior, and it's not always a smooth stitch. You can kind of see the joins there as well.
Yeah.
So you had a few issues with the book. Should we kind of like dig into those straight away then?
Yeah, probably. So I don't know quite which order to tackle it in. Kind of the first things that kind of came up with me were these issues of tribe and empire and civilization and uncivilized and scientific thinking versus, big air quotes here, backwards thinking. And a lot of that sat very uneasily with me, as kind of Terry giving a very fixed worldview and not particularly being very accepting of other worldviews, which is rather interesting when you look at a lot of people's synopsises of it, and you can kind of tell with the message of it that there's something there about respecting other people's cultures, and yet I did not get that from the actual book. I got more of a people are better off in an empire kind of vibe. Even though it criticizes aspects of an empire, it did a lot of praising it, and like I say, a lot of thinking that certain groups were forward thinking and certain groups were backwards, and that sat uneasy with me as maybe the first point of issue.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that upon listening to this version of the audiobook, definitely resonated with me as well. There's a discussion towards the end of the book where the various different factions are arguing about whose way of life is better, and one of the arguments sort of put forward by one of the characters is that, well, your way of life is only being made possible by the existence of the empire, and that was kind of like, I'm not too sure that's the best argument you can kind of put forward there, Terry. I don't know. I'm not too sure about that one.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note here that we're both extremely big Terry Pratchett fans, and we're not saying these things to besmirch his character. We're not,
we're not trying to
army for cancel culture. Exactly.
We're not trying to do that.
Right? We're not. We're just highlighting that this is a person raised in an education system decades ago on very British, again on your air quotes, teachings and things that I think he does have a more open mind than he puts down in this book.
I mean, definitely. I mean, one of my favourite books by him was Jingo, which was a scathing criticism of military imperialism and expansionism and all those sorts of things. So it was a little bit surprising to me that those arguments turned up in this book.
It was for me as well. I felt disappointed and sad because, I think one of the reasons why Terry Pratchett is so great is because of bits of wisdom that really call to kindness and fairness, and even though obviously there's the funny critiques he makes about those being made up and stuff, but still, you get what I mean about just being good to each other and various things like that, and ways of criticizing stuff like this that then does make it disappointing when you seem to have counteractive stuff in this book.
I think kind of another thing that I suppose needs to be said is that this was written by him when he was 17 years old. So it does kind of make me wonder how much of the book he could have changed at aged 43 without. So that's the other thing that's in the kind of like the back of my head is maybe it's one of those things. Well, maybe he disagreed with the sentiments he had at 17 years old, but it's kind of how much do you change the work without changing it completely into something new as well. So that's the other thing.
Totally, I mean, I tried to have a bit of a look if anyone had done a full analysis of the two different versions and things that was easy to access, and I didn't manage to find it. But I would be intrigued by that because it's interesting to know what did he think needed changing as to why it needed this revision, and therefore why some of it wasn't changed. It would be interesting. And one of the main things in that, another massive issue, and I'll be honest, the one that made me the most angry at times, I'll be honest, and sad and disappointed in it, is horrible. I'll be honest, I'm not saying he's a horrible person, but I'm saying these things are horrible ways of talking about people with disabilities and with limb difference. And so some of it is kind of the thing that I mentioned back in our Mermaid of Black Conch thing, that's just sort of a bit of an oversight. So there was a joke about the military phrase 2 arms, and someone's like, well, we've all got 2 arms, and it's just a bit like, like think about it before you say that. But it got a lot worse. So actually before that there was something about this other creature and them being really smart, and it was something like it's sad to have a brain and not have the arms to do things with it. Well, okay, that's not all right. There was then a group of people who were in battles and lost limbs from it, and there was a comment that when there were many of them in the room, there were only enough limbs and eyes and things for 4 whole people. Air quotes again, which is disgusting because people with missing limbs, people with limb difference are whole people. There was then unnecessary comments about them running into a place and then, hopped. Also not okay. So many things like that. Even worse, then later, he then calls them irregulars.
That just, one kind of...
Oh my God.
I've kind of... that when someone's trying to make a joke, I give them a lot of leeway, but that irregulars thing kind of, even for me, I was poor choice of word there. Terry,
part of it is choice of words. Part of it was sentence level stuff, and that's partly why I was so disappointed those changes weren't made in the revision, because they're here in our version. But some of it is, this very steeped in tradition things of othering and stuff like that. And I think that's the main thing that came away from this, both with all those comments and with the stuff we're talking about empire and stuff like that. It's this idea of what is normal and what is not. And in this book, maybe not in his life, in this book, he has a very fixed idea of what is normal and what is not normal. And his insistence on that then alienates a lot of people. And I think one of the things that's important, like you were saying about it being aimed at children, is that it's telling children that this kind of stuff is okay, that these kind of viewpoints are okay, that it's okay to consider these people as not normal and to make them the butt of jokes. And I'm totally with you about humour and jokes, and yeah, there is definitely a space for them. I'm not going to gatekeep what can be joked about and what can't be joked about. But he makes the point himself. He talks about satire being about criticizing and ridiculing the people above. And if you're criticizing and ridiculing the people who are hurting, you're not doing satire, you're doing bullying. You know, that's one of his famous quotes that I really love. And I'll be honest, in this one, there was a lot of bullying.
Yeah, I think just to defend him a little bit, to be fair, what we're referring to, the people that are missing limbs are sergeants. They're ex-military people that are now working as cooks in the imperial kitchen, and they do act as heroes in the book. So it's not like they've been given, I don't know, like subservient. Well,
they
are
act
servants
as heroes, but they're heroes in a separate group assisting. He even makes the point again later about when the women come in, and the women are like, we didn't assist, we took part. It's that idea they're still seen as someone separate. You know, that horrible word that was used to describe them as a group. Equally, they was described as a separate group.
Yeah.
Not some of the people that were there. I'm sure a lot of the Munrungs and the deaf many were cooks and were people in the army. They weren't separated into those groups. And it was just, I think I've kind of said most of my opinion. I'm not, to reiterate, I'm not cancelling him. I'm not saying he was a horrible ableist. I'm not saying he was a horrible racist. I'm not saying he was a horrible imperialist. I'm not putting these labels on him. I'm saying this is a very problematic text, and that I couldn't in all consciousness recommend it actively, and certainly not for you to give to your children, for them to then pick up things without it being challenged that those viewpoints aren't okay.
I think that's absolutely fair enough. I think it's kind of quite interesting you say about, othering people, because that's something that Pratchett in his other, especially in the Discworld books, that's something he's really good at challenging. Really, especially with I'm thinking especially about the watch books, where kind of like it doesn't matter what race, sex, size. Once you're in the watch, you're a watchman, and that's all that kind of matters. So it was a little bit strange seeing some of those things pop up in here, and so I think that's fair. And just, I mean, for me, the most surprising thing was the stuff about empire. So I think maybe we've got slightly, different sensitivities for things. So that for me, the stuff about, how empire and things of that nature are ultimately beneficial to society. It's kind of, I don't know, that kind of struck a quite a negative chord with me.
Agreed.
Because empire is ultimately built through suppression and bloodshed and abuse. And I think towards the end of the book, they say we can build a better empire that's fairer and more just and more democratic. But it's anyway,
it's not regretful about what's been, is it? It is sort of saying, okay, well, it's not going to be an empire anymore, it's going to be something else, and we're going to have different nations, and there's kind of an irk towards it, but it's not, it doesn't in any way say that things that have gone before have not been good. And I thought the most ridiculous one was when it was saying that the empire was made for peace, to stop people fighting all the time. It's like, doing that by going and, as you say, oppressing, being violent, making more wars. I really don't think that tracks.
I think there's a slight it's just, it didn't really join up for me, unfortunately. Let's talk about some of the positive aspects of the books. I think I really liked a lot of the characters in here. I think you could kind of see where Terry Pratchett punched up some of the dialogue, I think. But I really enjoyed both Glurk and Snibble. I think Pisma, I think for me, out of all the characters in here, I think you could kind of tell he's the one that's probably been updated the most. I think there's a lot of older Terry Pratchett's thoughts are kind of expressed through Pisma. I think Bane is kind of a really prototypical, maybe like version 1 Sam Vimes sort of thing going on with him as well. So, and then, there are other kind of various characters mentioned in there. Who was your favorite character out of that?
It's an interesting one. I did quite like Glurk.
Yeah,
it was quite good.
I think of my Terry Pratchett he's a brilliant writer. I think my favorite description of any character in the book is of Glurk, where he describes Glurk as not necessarily stupid. He's just like slow thinking. He'll get to the right conclusion in the end. He'll just take the long way round. And I just thought that there are funny sentences and descriptions of people like that throughout the book. So you expect Glurk. I mean, Glurk does act in the way that you expect in a lot of situations, but he just also show kind of like surprising bits of intelligence and kind of where his skill as a hunter comes in to help save the party kind of later on as well.
Yeah, a proper hero, with saving them and stuff. And then also has, funny jokes about he wants to have his breakfast first, kind of, I guess, Lord of the Rings-y, Hobbit-y throwback kind of thing. So for fans that like fantasy stuff because they like things like that, there's a kind of a nice overlap there with who he is.
Yeah, and so I was kind of reading around what other people thought of the book and kind of what themes they felt came up. And from like Wikipedia, what they said, the book explores the conflict between traditions and innovation. And it says there's an established civilization complete with bureaucrats, and there is another group that is a little bit more chaotic, and it's kind of about both groups trying to find their common ground to save their collective civilization. I'm not too sure I got that much in there from this. I'm not too sure what you'd think about that description.
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, I didn't like it from the issues that I brought up, but I also didn't think that the story was massively strong enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's really straightforward kind of like story. It's a standard adventure story.
Yeah, but it's like, even so, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of, I don't know, grip and drive. And yeah, it was sort of the different cities are under attack is kind of the thing. And yeah, my issue with that description, I guess, is that it's this idea of, the different tribes coming together. And as we've discussed, the issues around that and what that's promoting. I think what I wish had been the the overall thing of it rather than that was this idea of like the carpet as a world. And it's one of the reasons why I really like Discworld, that idea of a completely different place, but that's sort of a parallel to our own world. But then even more so with the carpet, because it can exist in our own world. You're talking about like the Highgate lands and the skirting boards and stuff like that. It's this, and
the table leg, yeah,
and like kind of Borrowersy-esque stuff. It is both a metaphor for our world and also something within it. And I really liked that, and I really liked that in the beginning of it. But yeah, I didn't think it was as much of a feature as I wanted it to be. It sort of then went to the background a little bit.
Yes, I think that flat worlds is something that Terry's explored a few times. So he's explored it obviously in Discworld. He also wrote a standalone novel called Strata that I read ages and ages ago, and I remember a flat world featuring in that. And then I think also he's a little bit obsessed with tiny people. I don't know if you've read the kind of like the Gnome trilogy, and kind of there's lots of like tiny little people in the Discworld novels as well. So I think those are two motifs that he kind of reverts back to time and time again. So yeah,
you can see that this is sort of, I guess, the seed for that, with it being his first novel and things like that. But yeah, and so I'm glad that he pursued that and he kept doing more of those other world, flat earth kind of metaphors and worlds. I
was reading an interview with Terry in preparation for recording this, and obviously getting a novel published when you're 17 years old is pretty impressive, I think. And he was thinking about writing a sequel, and one of his friends kind of talked him out of it because they said, sequels don't sell particularly well. So I think that's one of those things. Well, what would have happened to this carpet world if it'd been a little bit more developed? Instead, he kind of went off and developed Discworld instead. So it's kind of one of those, sliding doors moments.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's one that I wouldn't have wanted to have not listened to / read, because I am such a big Pratchett fan. It would have been weird to have not, you know. I think it is one of those kind of like, I guess, bucket list items. And seeing where some of the stuff comes from, he does do a really good job of like, all these parallels between worlds and the different names for stuff and the witty critique of stuff that I think is really good. Someone on a review also mentioned about how like explaining adult concepts in a like accessible kid-friendly way, which I think is good, certainly for children's books like this one, but then equally just for adult books. It's nice when we have a nice simple metaphor for something that can either make it make sense or just make us laugh at the ridiculousness of it, which is something that he does do really well. And it's nice to see where that came from. But you can see that he's improved on that with the later ones.
It's kind of, when people ask me, where you should start reading like a Discworld book from, I would never recommend them start off with like The Colour of Magic, because that's kind of, you can still see that The Colour of Magic, as good a book as it is, it's still kind of really rough in terms, he hasn't really developed his voice, and you can kind of, even though it was rewritten when he was 43 years old, you can still kind of see that he's developing his skills as a storyteller. And so, I think unless you're a must, diehard kind of must complete reading all his stuff, Pratchett fan, I think you could probably skip this. I think there's not a lot of, it's not his best work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and certainly not, as you say, not the one that we're going to recommend that newbies start with. And like I said, with issues of, impressionableness, and not recommending that kids are starting with it and stuff like that. But and I do think if you do decide you're wanting to, like you say, maybe not wanting it out of your off your bucket list, or curious about anything you've heard about it or whatever, I think we do have to say that David Tennant's narration of this one is the highlight of the book, I feel. I'm sorry if you're listening, David. It didn't massively blow me away. But it was very, very good. Kind of my first note on here was that it's cozy. He makes the book sound cozy and you kind of want to snuggle down and listen to it. I think, obviously as the acclaimed actor that he is very good at telling you a story, and all the emphasis and stuff that comes with that. A good amount of accents and voice differentiation. I was grateful that the way I encountered this book was having him tell me it rather than, I guess, me reading it dry.
I really enjoyed David's performance as the narrator. I think he did a really good job. I think when we previously talked about our kind of favourite audiobooks, you're looking for the narrator to kind of lift and elevate the text. And I think that's probably quite a tough ask with this particular book for someone to do that. I would say that out of the two versions of the audiobooks that I've listened to, I would prefer the one that I listened to previously, which was narrated by Richard Mitchley. There's kind of quite a few different versions of audiobooks of this particular novel out there. So the one that I liked was Richard Mitchley's one. And the reason why I liked that was, so what he did with the Deaf Menes, he kind of made them all Mediterranean and Italian soundings, and it just kind of, it made their kind of passionate way of looking at the world and their kind of like chaotic belligerence towards authority make a little bit more sense. It was kind of like, we don't bother with all this government stuff, we're too busy kind of like living a lush Mediterranean kind of like lifestyle, is kind of the effect of his accents had on the narration. And I felt it just brought a little bit more richness towards that particular tribe. I also kind of preferred some of the voices he did for some of the characters as well. I think David, as beautiful as his voice is, I think he made some quite obvious choices in terms of how certain characters sounded like. And he's also, I found it kind of quite interesting how his Scottish accent affected the sense of place I felt that the world was taking in terms of, I felt it was like the carpet was a slightly colder world in some sense of just kind of like thinking about, it feels like a little bit more like a Highland tale rather than when I was listening to Mitchley's performance, you got kind of a better idea of this carpet being this vast place where there's like different tribes and they've got different cultures and different accents and things of that nature. This felt kind of very much like, it's I don't want to say a white world, but it's kind of like a white fantasy, Western story, if that makes sense.
I get what you mean. I think, yeah, it is all the accents, he does do different accents, but they're all UK accents.
Yes.
And it does, I'll agree with you, it makes you think that it is a small place rather than a world, I guess, in part. Like, it's already difficult enough with things like this. When there's any sort of like size disparity, it's always difficult to conceptualize, isn't it? The
Yeah.
idea here is that there's people who are so small that they live in the carpet and you've got absolutely no idea that they're there. And there's kind of confusion sometimes about like, how tall are the hairs of the carpet meant to be? And like, how does all that stuff relate to each other? But yeah, I think then when you're looking at it bigger, I guess I did get more of a sense the carpet was, I guess, like the UK size, as in relation to the people, maybe, rather than thinking of it as an entire world, even though some of the text was trying to get me to do that. And yeah, maybe accent was part of that reason. And maybe if I'd listened to that other one, like you said, it would have a more full world reach sort of concept in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, just the name like Brocando, that does sound like, to me, slightly maybe Spanish or Italian, something like
Yeah,
that. So
that
I
vowel
think he could have,
ending does, yeah.
yeah, as well. So I think David's performance is absolutely beautiful. It's fine. I just preferred Richard Mitchley's performance. So if you're going to get this on audio, but I would probably, like for me personally, I'd probably recommend that one. You kind of mentioned briefly there how things scale up, and one thread I came across on Reddit about the book was kind of like, how do days work in the carpet, because like there's no like sunrise and sunset and things like that, and it does make you think. But it's kind of, I think when you're going into a book like this, you do kind of have to switch that little bit of your brain off and just go, right, suspension of disbelief, just go all in there as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's kind of weird thinking, like I was saying, just about the threads of the carpet. And I mean, illustration obviously really affects it. Kind of like, I was imagining a really fluffy carpet, and then I was like, no, wait a minute, you need to think of like a just normal bog standard carpet and really zoom in on that and all that. And I mean, I'm sat here in a house with like no carpets, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird thing to sort of try and get that sense. And yeah, I think there are certainly some things where you just kind of have to ignore it, but it's also a thing to note that it does jar readers and listeners when there does feel like there's some discrepancies with like, oh wait a minute, how big are those things meant to be, and stuff like you get in all sorts of epics and travel things of how long does this journey actually take and how come these people end up at this point at the same time as the other people, and and those kind of things. But that's not something particular to Terry or to this book, that anything with a long journey in it, there's the potential for that issue.
Yeah, I think exactly. I agree with that completely. I don't really have anything much more to say about this. I think, like, despite the criticisms, like the book's okay, I guess, and David's narration is good. But I think this is, out of all the books that we've reviewed so far, I think this is probably the most negative.
Yeah.
But I don't really enjoy saying that because I'm a big fan of Terry Pratchett. He was a really important part of my life, kind of like my child. So I needed help learning how to read. I had to get kind of taken out of my classroom, and I was given a special reading tutor. And the first two books I remember kind of reading by myself were J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and then Guards.
Oh.
And I remember kind of like staying up late at night with like a torch underneath my duvet reading those two books by myself. And it was a really proud achievement for me to get through those two books by myself without any assistance. Like, I don't like criticizing Pratchett's work, but it's, if there's stuff that doesn't work, you have to call it out as you see it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I totally agree. And yeah, I think my overwhelming feeling on a personal note was disappointment because for different reasons, but Terry Pratchett is also a really big part of my life, my reading journey, the reason I've got this job that I'm super excited about, of why I've fallen in love with stories and wanted to be part of creating them and getting them out there to people, is because of him. I'm staring at a load of Discworld books now. I have pages from a Discworld calendar stuck up on my wall at the moment, just behind me. Yeah, I love Pratchett stuff, and I think there's so much that makes him a great person, but that doesn't mean that. I think people are on a very binary stances on things at the moment. Of people are either good or people are bad, and if there's anything that we've been learning from recent books that we've been reviewing and stuff, it's that we need to dismantle that idea of good and bad, and kind of criticize things as they come and commend things as they come. And I think, like you're saying about needing to call things out, one of the main ones with this, like I have said, is with it being a kid's book as well as just anybody, but at the most impressionable ages, you don't want people growing up thinking things that are going to mean that they treat other people like less than people. Again, I'm pretty sure it's another Pratchett quote of that idea of that's what sin is. It's treating people as objects and not seeing them as people.
It's something even he mentions in this book is that, every people calls themselves the true people. And it's just kind of, anyway, fine.
That's whatever. Exactly. I think he had good intentions with this book, but then didn't have, whether it was the writing skill and or the emotional maturity and or the world experience or whatever it is to make this book what it could have been.
I think with a sensitivity reader or an editor that's kind of more chimed in, and we have to realize that this was a book kind of written quite a long time ago in any case, whether it was 17 or when he was 43, that maybe that language around inclusivity and those sort of things weren't necessarily in place with his editors. Though I don't there have been kind of questions about editors working today, how chimed in they are to those things.
Definitely.
In any case, so
no, for sure. And all of this stuff we're not saying as excuses again on that kind of like binary, well, we're flipping over to good or bad. It's this thing of like you say, calling stuff out. And the kind of, I guess, reiterating what I was saying, if you're wanting to listen to or read this book because it's Pratchett and you want to consume everything Pratchett, I would totally understand that, and I think that's fair. And I guess just take in what we've been talking about and consider it for yourself and form your own opinions on it. And if you're not that bothered, then I suggest you go spend some time watching the Paralympics instead and supporting those athletes and viewing them as the people that they are. And spend your time doing that instead rather than listening to this.
I would probably agree with that. Unless you're a proper diehard Pratchett fan, you're not really missing out on that much not reading the book or listening to the audio book. So there's that. Okay.
And read other Pratchett things as well.
I think we should definitely cover another Pratchett audio book at some point in the future, because he is, he was one of Britain's greatest ever writers. And it would be nice to review something of his that we actually enjoyed listening to. So
we definitely will do. I can definitely see that coming.
Okay, cool.
So
right. So I'm not too sure what book we're doing next. I think the plan is A Slow Fire Burning. So if we're waiting on an audio copy of A Slow Fire Burning from Penguin Random House. If we don't get that, we'll do something else instead. But keep your eyes open on our social media feed. Please review the episode on whichever app you're listening to it on. It really helps people discover it. And follow us on social media at audiobookishpod. If you've got any recommendations or comments, please email us at audiobookishpod@gmail.com. Any final words, Poppy?
No, I think that's good. Thank you for listening, guys. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.